let me start by saying that when we face crises like the one we are currently facing, it is crucial to think about our preparation for unavoidable changes. My dissertation is about climate crisis and the elements that has contributed to adapt to new circumstances. So, but I just want to say when we face a crisis, are the priorities to adapt to this crisis the same for all social and ecological context? I'm trying to go on with my, I don't know what happened with my presentation. It doesn't go on. Let me, it's stuck. Oh my God. Okay. Jesus. Here, do you see this screen? Adaptation?
Yes.
Okay. Adaptation is a concept related to environmental change. So in terms of climate change, adaptations has two main approaches. Yeah? With these approaches, researchers carry out research in order to inform public policy. And vulnerability is an approach that the vulnerability approach assumes that the system will suffer from damages, yeah, and that we have to figure out the magnitude of these damages. Is the mainstream approach to design policy. But although this is a main approach, I think we start with this approach from a negative point of view. Why? Because we start taking for granted that people or ecosystems are unable to adapt. Yeah. So this is a criticism for this approach. On the contrary, let me put this criticism that is vulnerability is considered less powerful as defenseless. It's a top-down approach, and is approach that inform policy in a homogeneous way. On the contrary, resilience is an approach that allows participation. It recognizes and promotes agency of actors. Is that it recognizes that actors can act as in during a crisis, and they have experience, and we have to work with them, and so on and so forth. And this is a more bottom-up approach designed that help design in public policy for adaptation. However, resilience, both vulnerability and resilience, fall in the same ontological perspective. So, and let me tell you in simple words what is ontology. Ontology, from the philosophy, the Heidegger suggests that ontology is related to the reason to exist, to the reason for being in the world. And Escobar says that these are particular ways of being, knowing, and doing in the world. So all the groups in society understand the world in the same way? Is my question for this slide. So let me introduce one of the three types of ontological perspectives that I will talk about in this presentation. The Western dual ontology, our ontology. The Western dual ontology is the one that prevails in the world. The characteristic of Western dual ontology is, yeah, we have a rational understanding of the world. We think into dichotomies. What is that? We talk about qualitative, quantitative, superior epistemic, inferior epistemic, modern, pre-modern. We also support Western dual ontology supports scientific knowledge over local, anthropocentrism over ecological perspective, colonialism over indigenous ways of knowing, and also consider indigenous people as people without history. Okay. From this perspective, indicators are chosen by Western researchers. Methodology is obeys universal knowledge. And for instance, if I talk about participatory land use management, behind all these four, land productivity, interaction between humans, and so on, behind this research topic, there are ontologies, local ontologies, if you are going to the field. So what if we carry out research about people with different ontologies with a Western ontological framework? Would there be implications, for instance, for indigenous groups or other traditional people in the world? Okay, right now I will introduce another ontological perspective, which is the relational ontology. I'm right now talking about indigenous people and other traditional peoples in the world, and using indigenous as a wider concept, not only the indigenous people from Latin America, but from Africa, from Asia, from North America, so forth. Okay. Relational ontology is a term that the relationship among concepts is the characteristic, not duality. And it thinks, the things are, they interact not only each other, but are mutually constituted. And let me give you an example. In the Andean Alio, the Andean Alio is a communal land tenure, but this communal land tenure is a relational, is under a relational ontology. Why? Because human and non-human beings are interrelated, but not only is in interrelation, but they among them there are agreements to accomplish, there are values, there are norms to manage territories. And when I'm talking about non-human beings, are, for instance, the deities of the rivers, of stones, of the deities of a mountain. So among humans and non-humans, there are kind of agreements to accomplish to live and to inhabit this territory. And to give you an example from indigenous people from the Amazon, they have, for instance, to ask permission to the shaman to go to hunt or to go to fish. So this kind of agreement has to be accomplished in order to have this, harmony between humans and non-humans in the territory. This communal land tenure suggests more not a possession or domination. So this is the way de la Cadena, I interpret de la Cadena when she talks about relational ontology in the Andean alien. But that's why I think indigenous people are able to fight for their territories, to go to death to defend their Mother Earth. I mean, some, no, I mean, I'm talking about some, not, I'm not putting everybody in the same sack. And the third the third types of ontology is called partially connected ontology, which is a term coined by academic Latin American scholars who says that after the encounter between Western and relational ontologies, Western culture and indigenous culture, a partially connected ontology starts. What is that? That is that there are non-Western societies or indigenous and traditional people has a foot inside their relational ontologies and another foot in the Western ontology. And this is, in my eyes, this is a resilience characteristic of them because they, in order to protect their relational ontologies, these relational ontologies that I was talking about before with deities and with their territory and with nature, they had to maintain the connected, partially connections with the Western ontology. And this is also a double-edged sword because indigenous people, the relational ontology of indigenous people to their own. And we see this with, for instance, they say that right now their youth or the new generations, they don't follow some of the rules they have to in order to live in this territory. And also I could say that the history of these groups during the modern era, in my eyes, is full of experience, and it is we can see their resilience, and resilience in what is that? Resilience is the characteristic that help us to face and overcome crisis. Yeah, my ability to face and overcome crisis. And I mean, if you see the history of Afro people in the diaspora with slavery, that they were uprooted from their territories, and they had to manage. They had to manage in terms of adapt to new circumstances. The same thing with indigenous people. They were also slaves and so on, but in their own territory. They were not uprooted that much as Afro people. So we can see these relational ontologies right now in our system, despite colonization. And we see yes.
Just to let you know that your mic wasn't work well. I'm not sure if it's only mine or I couldn't hear you well. So
from which
at the end of the slide, yeah, at the end of that, and then you can start the other one. Yeah, I don't know if it's only me or.
Okay. So this slide is to show that relational ontologies persist despite colonization. Yoruba people managed to hide their religion and their beliefs and their way of being and knowing and acting in the world, their relationship with nature inside the saints of Catholic Church. And the ayahuasca culture in Colombia and other countries in Latin America also has been hidden and maintaining in secrecy until recently that just came up. Okay. The implication of research. Resilience analysis draws on dualistic ontologies. If let me, like in summary, to say that resilience draws in dualistic ontology but if we neglect cultural dimension and relational and partially connected ontologies, probably we are kind of missing some knowledge that could be very important to build resilience, because resilience is not the same for everybody, the same thing for everybody. And it has implications for public policy, because if you design public policy with this type of information, public policy could get ineffective. If you deny, for instance, the cultural dimension, which are the things that are important for people, policy could fail. So this research raises the following question. But this question was I did, or I asked this question to the ethnic groups or the groups I work with. Huh? So, what are the things? What are the knowledge, belief, and practices that have helped you and the community to face and recover from shocks and difficult situations? So I didn't want to arrive to these communities that I work with a set of indicators already, indicators already arranged, and try to start a participatory approach in order to test my indicators. I wanted to see what were the indicators for the people, what they consider important when they face a situation like this. So, my research group, we're in Colombia with two groups.
Not sure if
One is in Afro-Colombian. Do you hear me?
Yeah, so yeah, now I can hear you. All right, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I did my research with these two groups. One is the NASA Indigenous group, and the other is an Afro Community Council, Afro Community Council, that both of them has common land, and they have their own lands and so on. The Afro-Colombian group inhabit the Chocó biodiversity at the Pacific coast of Colombia, and also they have strong social movements that have, I mean, were stopped. Everything, all the economy of Colombia were stopped because they are at the main port at the Pacific coast. So they were claiming a lot of rights and so. And the NASA Indigenous group at the Colombian Andes, who is considered, this group is considered the most important in terms of the strongest in terms of organization in Colombia, and they also have stopped the country when they have claims. Okay, this is my research process. My research process, I divided this research process into two phases. The first one is the indicator construction phase. So I start with reviewing literature on Western indicators and on an ethnographic work about these two groups, looking for where could I find some important things to recover from crisis. With this literature review, also I went to the field to work with them, to elicit with each one of the communities what is important for them when they face crisis, and they start telling a lot of things, and I could divide this in into knowledge, beliefs, and practices. And I divided into cultural indicators, social indicators, and economic indicators. And the indicator application and analysis phase, with all these indicators that because when I work with people, I came up with new indicators from these aspects that they mention that are important for them, when for face-to-face crisis. So the additional indicators, I divide the cultural, social, and economic. With all these indicators, I designed a questionnaire. This questionnaire, I adapt. I adjust them in a participatory way with both groups. With the authorities of both groups, and I could construct 102 questions and divided into some chapters, one with cultural, economic, social, environmental, and household information. And with this, I went to both groups and apply the questionnaire. I did a face-to-face household survey. I calculated the sample, and I applied in the questionnaire 100 questionnaires in the Afro group and 100 questionnaires in the indigenous group. These were household surveys. And the statistical analysis were descriptive and principal component, because I'm trying to construct also indexes, but it is something for the future. And before coming to the UF to write the thesis, I managed to return results, partially return the results. I have to go back and return the rest of, the results. So I would like to talk right now about these three types of indicators, and compare or try to show what is, for instance, from the dualistic or standard resilience indicators as an example. Use the whole list of indicators, because as I said, I constructed one. Cloud, you hear me?
Yes, Marta.
Okay. So these are cultural indicators, just as an example, from the dualistic standard resilience indicators. For cultural indicators, for instance, sense of place, from the dualistic ontology, we talk about identity, core values, and worldviews. Place attachment, we talk about the importance to inform ecosystem management. Of course, some of that I am listing here are not indicators in itself, but with these statements, you can go into a detail of indicators. Knowledge, learning, and innovation is another group of cultural aspects to construct indicators. We talk about biodiversity management, access and exchange of agricultural biodiversity, and some others in the cultural perspective talk about traditional ecological knowledge, and they are worried about how many plants locals are using from their knowledge, and what are these plant species are for, are used, or They talk about also environmental change from the traditional ecological knowledge. So, and from the relational ontology, some resilience indicators, cultural, for instance, attachment to ancestral territories. When I say attachment to ancestral territories, I understood the relationship between humans and non-humans that take place in the traditional sacred territory, beliefs and practices linking individuals with Mother Earth in order to maintain a balanced relationship. So the Afro-descendant people consider very important to to get attached, keep attached to the territory, to make the navel and placenta burial rituals. And what does it mean? It is a practice and belief that the newborn, the midwife, when the newborn is out, sorry if I use this language, these terms, but when the baby just is outside, they have prepared something with many elements from nature, and they put it in the navel to the child. And this practice is traced in Africa. And why? Because they do this because they get the stamina from the elements or the plants and animals or insects that are in this this thing that the midwife prepared. So it put in the navel, and the guy in the or the girl in their adulthood, in their adult age, can get the stamina of or get the characteristic of these animals or insects, and they can also stand like a stand crisis. They are able to work in a territory that is very hard to live, which is the Pacific coast, or even the Amazon, or other, or the African, sorry, the African, the Niger. Uh, okay, this is very important for them. The navel and placenta burial. The placenta is put in the, I mean, they boil the placenta, and when the mother gets during their pregnancy period, the mother has put a seed to develop, and when the baby gets born, they planted this seedling in above the placenta burial. So when the baby grow up, the gets attached to the territory, because the person or the adult says, hey, there is over there is my tree, and my navel is buried there. In terms of the indigenous people, they have rituals of harmonization. Is a ritual that link individuals with the Mother Earth. So they perform this ritual with the shaman, the Tewala, and they kind of fix some bad behaviors against nature with and restart their relationship with the ecosystems and with whatever they believe. Also, they perform this for agricultural practices and ecosystem use management. Also, they practice this ritual of harmonization. Even when I went to work with them in their territory, I had to harmonize myself. They performed on me this ritual, which were a simple ritual at the river, and they told me, in order you to start in a good way with the right food here in the territory, let's harmonize it and the work you're going to do with us. Okay. Other indicators are, for instance, traditional knowledge occupation among household members that suggest transmission of local people, of local knowledge to next generations. So in the survey, I stress the number of shamans, healers, midwives, herbalists, snakebite healers, and so on, who in the household, from the household. Other indicators are cultural practices for the care of women after childbirth, belief in traditional medicine, use of medicinal plants, consultation to local healers such as snakebite healers and herbalists, belief in traditional medicine if they are consulting the Chihuahua. So all these are resilience indicators that they mention during workshops, during conversations, during interviews that I did. And with all these, I constructed my questionnaire in order to apply in each of the groups that I work with. Other indicators that they mentioned were community traditional exchange, labor, and solidarity. Among neighbors, they go from one farm to another, or from one plot to the other, helping them and making like turns. So the whole group goes to this farm today, tomorrow the whole group goes to another farm. In this way, they don't have to, of course, hire people to work in their farms, but also their links among neighbors are stronger. The use of beverage, a special beverage that is made with plants and vines that helps them to keep healthy and helps midwives to prepare for delivery. And also there are activities traditionally performed for livelihood practices with the moon phase observation for livelihoods. So when they are going to plant, they do it with moon or with the moon cycle, or if they are going to harvest or to cut the forest and so on. Okay. Oh, this stop again. I have to wait a little bit because it's
Marta, it's 10 minutes to finish it.
Okay, I'm almost finishing, but
Great.
My computer stopped.
Yeah, just wait a second, maybe.
Yeah.
It's working
Okay.
still. Right. Yeah. Now it's
okay.
good.
The economic. Okay. Okay. Here, the economic standard indicators are livelihood diversity, income, sustainability, gross domestic product, and we have topics to measure livelihood diversity and income and so on from the Western dual ontology. And from the, I would like to show something wider or even more an example to show you the indicators they consider more important. So this is a question from the questionnaire. What of the following aspects have been important when you have faced crisis, even no matter violence, because these are groups that face a lot of violence in my country, climate or ecosystem issues? Okay, they said to have food planted on plots. If you don't have food planted on plots during crisis, you can get, your food security will be uh, will be broken. Okay, have more than one plot planted with food. So when they said that, they were talking about autonomy, and they were talking about diversity in income or non-monetary income. Yeah. Another is having other places in the territory from where to get food. For instance, river, streams, forest, ecosystem. So they don't just rely on plots or the farm to get food, but they have other ecosystems. To have a variety of food planted, to not only to have one single species, but to have diversity of seeds planted. So these are indicators that they privilege from the economic part. Perform various livelihood activities to support the family. This is also an economic indicator, because they say, no, we are not only farmers, yeah, and we are fishermen, we are healers, we have other type of sources to support our family in an economic way. So this is an indicator of resilience, because if you have just one single activity to live from, your family will be at risk. To have money, do mining. Also, all these are in the questionnaire I did. To have followed traditional practices like health ritual or moon cycle to guide everyday activities. So they have to rate from 1 to 5 each one of these indicators. To count on traditional medicine, receive support from municipality mayor, receive support from institutions such as Red Cross. These are social indicators. Count with traditional medicine is a cultural indicator. To have good neighbors in the community, they privilege a lot this indicator. Having family living elsewhere, because if something happened, we can get shelter there. And this is also social. Or being part of a group or association is also a social indicator of resilience. These are some indicators of economical and ecological, from the economic and ecological perspective. These are the social standard, the dualistic standard resilience indicators talk about social capital and social ties, community resilience, and they were talking about both groups that it is important, the importance of participation in assemblies of the community council in terms of the Afro-descendant, and in terms of indigenous people, the Congress of the Indigenous Association and Life Plans, having family ties with within the ancestral territory and outside. So in other cities, or to get shelter, as I said before, to be part of social groups, And something important is that they like, or they see that strengthened ties with neighbors is a very important uh, resilience indicators to face crisis, because the first people who aid them during climate or any other crisis are neighbors. So when they harvest, they share their harvesting with neighbors. This is a, and we could I designed some questions where we were calculating this in a monetary way, in a kilos, or in a product, in the production, and the destination of this production or gathering from ecosystems, how much per year the production and the destination, if it is for sale, for self-consumption, or to offer to neighbors. And this was these results were, we discussed a lot of about these results with them. So these were the most, I mean, most important, or they like a lot this analysis that we did, because they could see their autonomy, and it was important for them. Okay, let me go to the conclusions, because time is running. Okay, I think resilience analysis, both the Western dualistic ontology and the relational indigenous, from the indigenous and other traditional people, need to be taken into account, both of them. Why? Because the indigenous and other traditional people have experienced colonization and other external shocks. This is very important to think about both sustainability and resilience. So, okay, I'm almost done. Okay.
Okay.
Findings from a participatory research process with Afro and indigenous people in Colombia show that there are numerous knowledge, beliefs, and practices that are relevant or important to resilience, and important for these people themselves, and that they can tell us a lot to scientists in order to inform policymaking. Yeah, that's why it is important to have not that homogeneous information, because everybody has different type of perception, or understanding the world, or the different interests of being in the world, or yeah. So it is important, and it can tell us a lot. Also, they defend, I mean, indigenous people has defend their relational ontologies, as I have mentioned. So, and these elements are there. So we have to be creative in order to talk about, or talk with them, and to have kind of key of indicators that could be from our interest, but also from the interest of people. Because at the end, when some crises are coming, people adapt themselves. Very often, institutions don't go to aid them in just at the in the right moment. They have to manage themselves. So adaptation also should be in the hands of people. Otherwise, the disaster could be higher. And all these broader implications for resilience analysis and adaptation to climate change. Instead of a top-down and paternalistic approaches to policy for adaptation, there is a need for more attention to bottom-up participation, because participation can yield insights about indigenous and other traditional people from their knowledge, beliefs, and practices for a broader understanding of resilience to inform policy for adaptation. And with this, I conclude and really thank you very much for coming for connecting. This is a sui generis Tropilunch, but thank you for listening to me.